What's up, YouTube? I'm Mike, and I just finally crawled. I've been lazy today, man, and I'm wearing my jacket because it's freezing in here. This MK677's got me eating calories like crazy. I just had a ice cream smoothie, so maybe that's why I'm feeling a little bit chilled. Today I'm going to be going into the next part, I think, of my what it's like going to prison story. But before we get into the next part, I want to share something with you that I found from my last video that I think is really interesting. Usually when somebody says something stupid in the comments, I call them out by name. And in this case, I'm going to choose not to because I don't want to risk, somebody getting their panties further in the wad and accusing me of slander. So one of the things that's very interesting is that this video series that I've been doing on what it's like to go to prison, while it's not the top viewed content on my channel by any length, I probably should have just titled every video like what it's like to go to prison on Tremblown, and then it would have like 3 times as many views. I think I could just like literally make a whole series of videos that don't even have anything to do with Tren. Like, what's it like gardening on Tremblown? What's it like taking a shit on Tremblown? What's it like, going for a walk on Tremblown? And if Tremblown's in the title, it's guaranteed 1,000 views. But despite the fact that these videos are not viewed as well as my Tren videos, there has become this kind of cult following of you guys that are really sucked into this story in sort of reality TV sort of way. So by and large, all of these videos have been received very well, with the exception of the last video, and there's some very suspicious behavior that has been uncovered. So for some reason, there's a particular person who chose to attack me in the comments section of my last video, which was basically going into the fact that I was living in a prison cell with a pedophile. And this particular person attacked me in the comments section about comments that I made about my wife like maybe 2 fucking years ago in a video. So like this person, I don't know who he is, this person's been watching my content presumably for 2 years and has never, to my knowledge, has never commented on a single video. But for some reason got so triggered yesterday by my video about pedophiles that they lashed out in the comments section. Which in my analytical mind kind of makes, it's kind of like one of those tell me you're a pedophile without telling me you're a pedophile kind of things. I found it very I actually lost several subscribers on that video, and I think this is just my guess. I'm not making any factual claims. I'm not stating that anybody is something, but what I think is the people who took exception to that video took exception because of the fact that they're fucking pedophiles. And they didn't like me talking about how dangerous these people are, and how if you're born with an attraction to children, there's little to no therapy for you, and there probably should be an outcome that results in, permanent, like, removal. I don't think they liked that very much. I think they got very fucking wounded by the fact that I was calling them out about their disgusting, vile behavior, and that's why they got so triggered, and that's why they unsubscribed to my channel. So good. I'm glad to see that maybe I have rid my channel of some potentially lurking creepo weirdo motherfuckers, because that's the thing that we need to realize in our society. These guys aren't just in prison, guys. They're walking the streets. They're all around us. Look up a sex offender registry list. You will find these people are on every street corner just about. And so coincidentally, when I talked about that very candidly on one of my videos, it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Which begs the question, like, Why would that possibly rub you the wrong way? You would think that like universally people would be applauding any negative speech about pedophilia, but that's not the world we live in. And that's what I mentioned in that video, is that we live in this crazy fuck world where this behavior is trying to be normalized, and I will personally not fucking stand for it. So if you got your panties in a wad because I was talking about you, well, tough shit. You better keep your nose clean, because if you end up in the big house, you will be fucking dealt with. So, moving right along, today's episode, where I left you last time, I had just gotten a new celly. Man, this lighting is like really bright today. I don't know what's going on here. When I left you last time, I had just gotten a new celly who was basically a giant. This guy was easily 6'2", every bit of 300 fucking pounds. Not like obese either. You know, like this guy was built like a fucking linebacker. So it wasn't like I had like this giant Humpty Dumpty walked into my cell that, you know, maybe I felt like I could bob and use my fucking weave and tire this motherfucker out if he tried to attack me. No. That's not what we're talking. Please don't get that vision. I want you to like imagine like fucking Lawrence Taylor or some shit just walked into your cell, and you can tell at a minimum this guy's gone gay for the state. Okay? And so I was petrified. I remember mentioning to you guys, I think briefly, that in the upper R's, in R5, the prison clothes that you were issued is actually a jumpsuit. It's a one-piece jumpsuit, which, thank God, buttons up the front. So if somebody's gonna try to get around your backside, they gotta get all your buttons open and get your whole wrap taken off to get to you. And I don't know if it was maybe then that I even realized that, because the second, like, I don't know if you, as a man, like, I don't know if you guys, if anybody in my audience has ever been in, and I hope to God nobody in my audience has ever been victimized or had something against your will happen to you. But if you've ever been in a situation where you thought that shit might happen to you, you know what I mean. The gears start turning in all kind of different ways that you know you've made. Like, we're, as men, we don't have to worry about this shit. You know, it's interesting when I talk to my wife about some of these experiences, and like for her, that's just every day. It's just every day. Every time a woman leaves the house, like, she's got to have a different mentality about her. If she's walking by herself in an alley or an ill-lit parking lot, or anywhere there might be a blind corner, or like she's getting her car, when maybe she's manually washing her car wash, and so she's in some kind of like stall. Like, a woman's brain operates differently because they are basically like 100% of the time somebody has intentions. Somebody wants to do something to them. As men, we don't really think about this shit. Like, when I was homeless walking the streets, man, I was never scared. Worst case scenario, like, as a man, you might get mugged. You know, somebody might try to beat you up. But when you're homeless, it's like, I ain't got shit. It's like, what are you gonna mug me for? You know? It's like, so even in an environment where I was totally living, you know, on the streets, I was never like afraid for my safety. And then suddenly you're thrust into this environment where for the first time you're realizing you could be the object of somebody else's sexual desire, and they have the power to force that upon you. And you're not equipped for this. Like, your brain starts having all kinds of fucking processes and thoughts you've never had before. So I don't want to beat this point too much, because the truth of the matter is, so I'll tell you. So we start talking, you know, we start doing the like I've said many times, that it's like the new celly interview. Hey man, what's your name? Where are you from? What are you down for? How long you been in? Where you going? Shit like that. So right out the gate, I'm dealing with this guy who is a giant and is clearly of the homosexual persuasion. And so I ask him, hey man, what you in for? This guy's in the midst of being transferred from one facility to another. He was at some stage in the game. He was in some stage of his sentence for a home invasion with multiple other charges. So here's the gist of what this guy did. And this is what he's telling me. He was a member of, I don't know if it was like a full-blown street gang or if it was just like a crew, there was like 4 or 5 of these guys, and they had been cased in this house, and they broke into this house. So right there, you've got if you break into a house when no one's home, that's one kind of charge. Okay, it's breaking and entering. I think is what's called, I forget. But if you break into a home and someone is there, they're actually in the home, that's a home invasion. That immediately gets escalated to another penalty. It's a much more severe penalty. I believe, if I remember correctly, they had broken into this guy's home and they were in there for a minute, like pillaging the place. It was like a 2-story house, big, nice house. And the guy came home when they were in the process of robbing him. And so this guy, my particular cellie, we'll just call him, John. John was one of the bigger guys in the crew, and he actually punched this guy and like knocked him out or incapacitated him. And then he took him and he put him in like an office chair and duct taped him to a chair. Okay, so he duct taped this guy to a chair, and then the guy was either came to or was otherwise disorderly, and he beat him to some greater or lesser degree with a length of pipe, lead pipe. I don't believe he killed the guy, but this was basically a home invasion, which I believe is a class 1 felony, and a whole bunch of assault, serious violent assaults. This guy had a whole stack of fucking charges that he ended up getting time on. So I'm hearing this guy tell me that this very large man tell me this very candid story about how he had broken into somebody's house, taking this guy hostage, basically, duct taped him to a chair and beating him with a lead pipe. And damn, like, if you're a person who, like I said, man, I'd never been in any kind of trouble. Like, I was just like, in my mind, I was like this super low-key guy. Like, low-key, I was not a brawler in high school. I wasn't doing any B&Es. Like, I'd never robbed anybody. I'd never been around this kind of element of people at all. There was like one kid in my neighborhood that I grew up with, and he was like a little pyro, and he got in some fucking trouble, like setting shit on fire. He was like the little badass kid in the neighborhood, and he did a bunch of little weird shit that like I had exposure to, but I had never been around anyone that I was afraid of. You know what I mean? And so this guy's candidly telling me the story of this shit he did, and so my fucking, my emotional state is just going further and further into the toilet, because now it's like, okay, I've got this giant homosexual, like psychotically violent guy that's in this cell with me. I'm a fucking dead man. Like, this is gonna be, like I'm like preparing to write my final goodbyes to my parents and get a letter out, But as fate would have it, somewhere over the course of the last 18 plus years this guy had been incarcerated in the prison system, he had apparently calmed down quite a bit. And so within like 30 minutes or so of talking to this guy, it's just, again, it goes back to what I was saying about how when you're in the mess hall and you suddenly start to feel the feeling. You suddenly start to pick up on the vibration that some shit's about to pop off. You just get a feeling about people. Generally speaking, you can just get a feeling about people. When I saw the other guy walk down the tier, I knew immediately there was something wrong with this guy. And with this guy, I was not getting that vibe, in fact. It was disorienting. And it made me a little nervous because it was like, this guy actually seems like really fucking cool. You know? So like, I'm sitting here looking at this guy who's done some seriously heinous shit in his life. This is what he got caught for. I mean, my God, there's no telling the shit that this guy has done in his lifetime. But it was like a lifetime ago. He'd been locked up for like 18 years. And he was much older, 18 years older, so like hormone levels, psychology change, you become resigned to your fate. And so over the course of the next, few hours up in the cell, like, we're getting along great. Like, great. Like, dude seems totally fucking cool. But in the back of my mind, I'm not, like, ruling out that like, he could be playing me. Like, this could be, this guy's this guy's been down for a long time. He knows the game. Maybe he's kind of doing to me what I did to the other guy, where I pretended to befriend him to earn his trust so I could find out what he was really all about. And so I'm like, I'm kind of rolling with it, but I'm staying wary the whole night. And so I'll never forget that night. They fucking cut the lights out, and I get up on my rack because I was on the top bunk, he was on the bottom bunk, and I slept with my back to the wall. I was like, I was as close to that fucking. If I could have melted into the wall, I would have. Like, I was all the way back on this bunk, just like, and all you can do is hope and pray. And so at this point, I think I had actually gotten my first Bible. So I made a video yesterday. Some of you may have seen it, where it's going to kind of give some spoilers. But there's very few reasons you can get out of your cell. And I'm going to go into most of those today. One of them is going to chapel. And so when you go to chapel at Shelton, you could request a Bible, and they would give you a brand new study Bible. And so I had gone to the chapel and I had requested a new Bible, and they had issued me a brand new King James version of the Bible. I still have this today. It's still got my prison number written on the inside cover. It's the other Bible that I've told you. I have read the Bible cover to cover twice in 2 translations, and both of those readings occurred while I was locked in prison. And so I got my new King James study Bible, and I had been reading that. And I wasn't a Christian at this point, but my eyes were being opened to some other possibilities. And so to say that night I was praying, it is somewhat of a stretch, but basically it's the same kind of idea. Whether you're like asking God, please don't let me get raped tonight, or you're just like thinking to yourself, please just let anything but that happen. Like, I'll take a beat down. This cannot be what's about to happen to me. Thankfully, I wake up the next morning and all of my orifices are perfectly intact. And so I don't want to beat a dead horse too much with this guy, because there's basically other things that I can cover. But the short side of this very what I thought was going to be terrifying set of events actually turned into, this guy was one of the best cellmates I ever had. Like, we became like great. He was the coolest guy. He was one of the coolest guys I ever did time with. And we got along fucking great. And so in very short order, the tables turned, because the day that I get this new cellmate, I see this giant of a man walking down the tier, and I think, oh my God, I'm in trouble. You know what I mean? Like, this is gonna be bad. And then within the span of 24 to 48 hours, I'm walking tall as fuck down the tier next to my new celly, who's fucking built like a fucking NFL linebacker. And so I've gone from being very afraid to now actually feeling very secure, because I've made friends with this guy who could just thump most people across the fucking hallway without even missing a fucking beat. And we've become good buddies. And so now, man, I feel like I'm fucking cruising. So this situation that could have gone really bad in a twist of fate ended up really going great for me. And so we spent a lot of time, like I said, it's like 23-hour day lockdown. But one of the things that started happening next in this classification process, as I alluded to previously, is that they will not allow you to leave the classifications unit without having a high school equivalency. And so I mentioned in one of my previous videos that I had intentionally dropped out of high school to dodge going to the Air Force that I had already enlisted in. And so they found out that I didn't have a GED, and I was called down to this basically to the class. They have a classroom. They have a school basically inside the prison. And it was run by this lady who, I don't know whether she was volunteering her time or there was just like a second job, but she was a professor at one of the local colleges. I cannot remember which one. And she was kind of a lifeline to me to reality. Because, again, you know, there are some very brilliant people inside the walls of these facilities, and you know, just remarkably intelligent people who some of them are locked up because of their intelligence. You know, they were running high profile schemes. Like, I got locked up with a guy who had this entire ID faking business. He had like a mobile business where he was creating fake IDs and passports and documentation. He's fucking genius. This guy was really fucking good at this shit. Kind of shit you see on movies and shit where some guy's trying to change his identity and get out of the country or something. This guy was doing that. And he got busted by the feds, got 6 years. And so I was locked up with people who were like criminal mastermind geniuses. And then the guy next to you is like 3 hairs short of a baboon. Okay? Like, catastrophically fucking ignorant. And so, going into the GED prep class and being able to have access to this college professor, somebody who I could speak to on my level, was really like a breath of fresh air. And so she starts going, you know, there's like a little intake process, and she starts going over everything, and she's like, okay, you're gonna have to do a 2-week GED prep class. And I just kind of laughed at her. I was like, I don't need that. And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, just give me the test. Like I'll just take the test right now. And she's like, yeah, right. Like that's what everybody says. And I was like, no, but I'm telling you, just give me the test. I'm gonna fucking ace this test. Like, this is a joke, okay? And she said, look, she's like, I think her words were, if you leave this room, you're going back to your cell. You know, like, you're not getting out of here. You're locked up anyway. So what difference does it make? Why don't you just spend 2 weeks with me, and you'll go through the GED prep class. If you don't need it, great. But she says, I'm just going to tell you, you know, you take it once, and if you fail it, you have to repeat the class. And so you're just going to extend your time period. So why don't you just take the class? You get to use some computers, you get access to books, you get some time out of your cell. She's like, I'm not half bad to be around. She's a real sweet lady. And so she got me. So I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. You know, fuck, that beats being in the cell. So for the next 2 weeks, I was getting out of my cell every day to come hang out with this lady and go through this GED prep class, which was mind-numbingly boring. And And so, like, when I would finish with whatever work was assigned me that day, she would let me get on this computer, which had very limited access to anything. And I could get some books, and there was some other brain stimulating kinds of things going on in there. And so it afforded me some time out of my cell and gave me something to kind of do. So aside from GED prep class, the only other thing that you can really opt into is religious services. And they have, because of, all the laws, they have to make multiple different religious services available to the inmates. And so you've got various different churches that come. One of my favorite churches that would come was a Baptist church, and they were kind of the fire and brimstone kind of preaching, and they had a band. They had like a Christian rock band. And man, like when you've been locked up for a long time and you just sit in a fucking concrete room, and then you walk into this chapel and the fucking drums are going and this guy's on an electric guitar and you don't even give a shit what they're singing about. And I'll never forget one sermon they gave was about the walls of Jericho and how, I guess it was the Israelites marched for so many days around the walls of Jericho until the walls fell. I think that's basically what it was about. And she had all of us convicts, all these prisoners, this big chapel and all these chairs, and she's got us marching around these chairs. And I think we were chanting something at some point, and the band's playing. And religious services can be very emotionally manipulative. They get you worked up into a fervor. And that's what people claim. They think they feel the Holy Spirit in the room. And it's funny, like people will go to a church service and listen to some fucking, hymnals or whatever, and they feel the Spirit. And it's like, I mean, that's cool and all, but please understand, like, I've been to like Smashing Pumpkins, concert, felt the exact same thing. So I don't know, maybe the Holy Spirit was in the room at the Smashing Pumpkins concert, but the feeling that a lot of people call the Holy Spirit that they catch inside of a church service, you can very easily catch that same feeling at a fucking rock show. So whatever, but it was something to get me out of my cell. And admittedly, when you're locked up, the Holy Bible is like your best friend in the world. Because it's all about telling you that it's okay to have nothing. In fact, not only is it okay to have nothing, but you're actually a better person if you reject the world. The Bible says love of the world is enmity toward God. That you can't love the world and God at the same time. That you should kind of like eschew worldly pleasures. It tells you that the Son of Man had nowhere to lay his head. Jesus was basically like this homeless guy. He wasn't living in mansions and buying Louis Vuitton. And so when you're locked up in cages and you're cut off from the outside world, you really identify with the stories in the Bible, and it's like made for you. Then you get into the New Testament and you start reading Paul, and Paul was actually imprisoned for preaching the gospel. So there's all of these books in the New Testament that you can read, the epistles of Paul, where he's literally saying, I'm writing to you in chains. Like, I'm in chains for my faith. I'm suffering every day for the gospel. And it can convince you in this place that so are you. You're just like Jesus or Paul or any of these other people who were unfairly caught up on some charges, and the Bible just speaks to prisoners in a way that I don't think it speaks to anybody else on earth. It's hard to be a Christian on the street when you're surrounded by, when you can choose to not go to church and just go fishing or play golf or do all of these myriad things that there are in the world to do, but you're supposed to ignore all the worldly pleasures and go to church. When you're in prison, you have no worldly pleasures. So burying yourself in God is the easiest thing to do. And in fact, he makes your time in prison feel meaningful. So instead of feeling like you're locked in this box and you're just wasting these 2 years of your life away and you're getting nothing in return for it, and you're depressed and you're angry and you just want to claw your way through the walls, you start getting in that Bible and you start going, man, my life has tremendous meaning in this place. If I spend this time getting closer to God, not only did I not waste 2 years of my life, I began to feel lucky. As I continued reading this Bible, I went from feeling like somebody who had caught a raw deal while my wife is out there living her life and living with another man, and I'm missing my son's birthday parties, and I'm missing watching him grow up, and my friends' lives are going on without me. I went from a place of being envious of all of those people to feeling proud that I was having the opportunity to develop this insanely close relationship with God, that all of these other people who were on the outside and were free weren't able to get, because they were constantly being tempted by the devil. They were constantly being tempted by worldly pleasures. It's hard, man, to go to work all day and come home to your wife and your kids and try to, section out some time to read this gigantic fucking book cover to cover and try to really study it and absorb it. That's a hard thing for anybody to do. But when you got 23 hours a day, man, that book became my lifeline to sanity. And so I was in it all day, every single day. And I start writing letters to my dad and to my relatives about this religious experience that I was having. So one of the things I did to spend as much time out of my cell as I could and to get the best education that I could is I went to all the religious services. So I went to the Baptist service when they came. I went to the Catholic service when the Catholic priest came. They even had a meditation class. I went to that shit. I went to just about, I didn't go to any Muslim services. I don't remember them being, I think that you're not allowed, actually. I think that's like the one place where like not any old body can walk through the door. I don't know that for sure. Again, I don't know anything about the Islamic faith. So don't come attacking me. I know nothing about it. But I read part of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a religious text. I read the Bible cover to cover twice. I was going to meditation group, which was fucking weird, honestly. It was real. I only went like a couple of times. Sitting in a room with like 8 other dudes cross-legged in total fucking silence for 30 minutes with your eyes closed? No, bro. No, that's not for me. I'll take the fucking fire and brimstone. Jesus is coming back on the clouds to save us all fucking spiel way before I'm sitting in a room with fucking 8 dudes with top knots, fucking, no, I'm not fucking doing that shit. So I only went to meditation class twice, but I was going to the various different denominations who would come. So like there was Assembly of God, there was the Baptists came, the Catholics came. I think that was the 3 that I went to. And so while I'm going back and forth from these religious services, I'm also taking this GED prep class. And so eventually my 2 weeks is up, and I've been plodding through this class. I've been spending most of my time chatting up this teacher. She was an older lady. I don't mean chatting her up like sexually. I mean just having somebody to talk to. And so the fateful day comes, and it's time to take the GED test. And so again, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but like this is fucking basic shit, guys. And I feel bad because I'm sitting here in this test and I was shocked, first of all. When you open the GED test booklet, in the front of the fucking booklet, they give you all of the formulas that you need to solve the equations. So like one of my weaknesses, even in high school, is I suck at math. I'm not really good. Like geometry, I didn't fucking give a shit. Algebra 2, the second you start hitting me with the fucking word problems and Jane has 10 apples and Bobby, I don't give a shit. And you know, this train is traveling at 3 kilometers an hour going east, and another train is traveling at 5 kilometers an hour going fucking west. And what time will somebody give a shit? Never. That's the fucking answer. I don't fucking know. I sucked at math in school because I don't understand the way they teach math. It's so fucking ignorant. What, you know, if you want to teach math to kids, why don't you teach them like how to take a kilo of Coke and cut it and sell it on the street for profit? What if you did that? Man, kids would be just taking notes like vigorously, like, can't wait to get to class tomorrow. Tomorrow they're going to teach us how to cook meth in chemistry. This is great. Like, there's ways you could teach shit in school where you could actually get people to give a fuck and pay attention. When you're talking about Billy and Tommy and Gina and their fucking apple collection, nobody gives a shit. So, I fucked off math in high school, and they passed me through it because they knew I was otherwise intelligent. And so I opened the front of this test booklet. You get a calculator and all of the equations are in the front of the booklet. So if you have 4 brain cells and you can figure out which equation and what numbers to punch into the calculator, and then it's multiple choice. I mean, my God, this is not tough shit. But dude, and again, I'm not trying to hate on anybody. Maybe there's some people in my audience who have struggled with the GED. I know there's all kinds. I'm not fucking hating on anybody. I'm telling you my experience. There's been some people getting real butthurt in the comments because apparently I talked down about somebody's job. You have to understand, all I have is my perspective on life. You have your perspective. Okay? So, like, it takes all kinds. I'm not putting any value judgments on anything. In some ways, I'm kind of a fucking communist, really. I hate to admit that, but I don't really agree with the fact that a plumber, you know, gets paid very little money and a neurosurgeon gets paid a fuck ton. You know, we need plumbers. I've needed a plumber in my life I've never needed a neurosurgeon. Hopefully I'll go my entire life and never need a neurosurgeon. I need a plumber fucking twice a year. So I agree that the disparity in incomes doesn't make sense in our world, and I think that there's a better way to do it. So I'm not valuing anybody's existence. We need all fucking kinds. I would lose my absolute shit if there was nobody to make me a fucking Whataburger. That's what I had last night. It's delicious. I need these fucking people, and I need them to make my burger right every time. Okay? I said no cheese. That means no fucking cheese. Don't put cheese in my burger. I don't know why it's so difficult for some people. But I digress. So I'm sitting in the GED classroom and I'm banging through this test. And again, I'm not trying to make fun, but it is funny to me from my perspective. Okay? There's guys sitting next to me that are on attempt number 3 and they are sweating fucking bullets. Like this guy next to me looks like he's having a fucking panic attack, and I feel for bro, okay? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I wish nobody had that kind of struggle, but people do. And so, I go through the whole fucking test, and, you know, it gets turned in, and the results come back a couple weeks later, and I get called down to the classroom, and the teacher's got this big smile on her face. And she goes, "You were right." And I'm like, "I was right." She was like, "Right about what?" She goes, "You didn't need to take that class." I said, "Why is that?" She said, "You scored in the 99th percentile." My GED test score was higher than 99% of everyone who takes that test. And she told me I have never, in my 20, 30 years of doing this, had someone score this high on this fucking test. So she said, like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And so she said, "You know, congratulations. I think I missed 2 questions on the whole thing. I aced the math. I think there was 2 questions that I missed on the whole test." And so I was redeemed. And if obviously it feels good, it always feels good to do well. And so, but then that portion of that piece of the classification process was over, and it was back to time in the cell with my linebacker Selly, who, as I had said, ended up being the nicest guy you'll ever fucking meet in life, despite the fact that he savagely beat someone with a lead pipe 18 years ago. The new version of John was absolutely the kindest human being in the world. And to give you an example of this, like I told you, when you're in classifications, and you're locked down, you don't get any commissary at all. So you are fucking starving. Okay, like the meals are not enough. They're good, but they're not enough for me. And I guess the biggest reason I was starving is I don't eat bread. And bread makes up a lot of the calories in prison. And so there was no trading going on in the mess hall at Shelton because we only had like 7 to 15 minutes. And so I missed out on a lot of calories because I don't eat bread. And so I was starving every night. Well, it turns out my giant, scary as fuck Selly John happens to be a diabetic. And so because he's a diabetic, he gets a sack lunch in the middle of the evening every night. And so you remember I told you back in the beginning of one of these videos about the Prison Rape Elimination Act and how people will try to do favors for you in exchange for you giving up something you probably don't want to give up? Well, early on in our living together, John gets his sack lunch and it's got an orange in it. And man, I have low blood sugar problems. Like I've talked about this at length. And so I was usually hurting. Like I was pretty miserable overnight, starving and just, I was just hungry as fuck every night waiting for breakfast. And so he got like 2 peanut butter jelly sandwiches, or the 2 peanut butter sandwiches. I don't remember what was all in the sack lunch, but it was a decent amount of food and it had an orange in it. And he was like, "Hey man, I know you're hungry up there. Do you want my orange?" And I'm like, no, dude, like you keep it. Like I don't want any problems. And he's like, "Dude, come on, man. I'm not fucking with you. Like you don't have to take it. I'm just saying, like I know you gotta be hungry. You can have my orange if you want it." And goddamn, man, I wanted that fucking orange. I was so fucking hungry. And so I remember the first time, like I'm so hungry, I'm doing math like hunger, butt rape. Hunger, like I could probably get used to the butt rape, right? like my stomach hurts, like. And so I took the fucking orange. And dude was happy to fucking give it. He never fucking did anything to me. And so every single night for the next, we were locked up. I guess we were there together about a month. And every single night when his fucking sack came, I got that orange, and man, that orange was just like my lifeline to the fucking next day. I wish I could remember this guy's name. This dude, man, he was the greatest fucking guy. Like, we had such a good time together. We would sit in the house and compare notes and talk about crazy stories, and he would tell me all of his fucking misadventures. He would tell me these fucked up things about the 18 years he was down. And it's weird. It's like there's something about me. I guess you guys that actually like my channel, something about the way I am, it meshes well with certain kind of people. Like, and maybe it's the honesty factor or whatever. I don't know what it was, but this guy, I think, would have been a member of my audience. Our personalities really meshed. He loved that I would sit and listen to his stories and that I was real transparent. And so he would just regale me with tales, of all the stuff that happened. He would tell me a lot about what to look out for, And so they talk a lot about this thing you'll hear about called a prison daddy, which is where an older guy will take a younger guy under his wing and kind of offer him protection and food and shit. But this always comes at the cost of, well, not always, but very commonly this comes at the cost of sexual favors. This guy never asked a single fucking thing from me. He never one time made me feel even remotely a little bit scared. And I remember laying in my bunk one night, not long before I eventually got out of this place. And it was just like this epiphany, you know, where you come to this realization that, like, I am in fucking prison, locked in a cell with a 300-pound gay black man who is giving me his orange as a special treat every single night. And it is costing me nothing. And not only am I not afraid, I feel secure because I know that there is nobody on this entire tier that is gonna even fucking think about fucking with me. And so at that point, man, I was basically just cruising. Writing letters, reading my Bible, going to fucking rec when we had it. And when you go to rec, there's a computer terminal that allows you to communicate with your counselor. And so all it will do is send basically like direct messages to your counselor. And so every time you go, you're constantly checking to see if you've gotten a message. And what you're looking for, again, is your chain letter. You're looking to find out that you have been placed into a prison and that you are going to be leaving this facility and going to your home prison. And again, for some fucking reason, I got stuck in Shelton far longer than I was supposed to. And while I was there, I received mail one day, and the mail was documents from the court. And it was to notify me that my divorce from my wife was final, and that she'd been awarded full custody of my son, and I was given no parental rights at all. And that when I got out of prison, I was going to be allowed to petition the courts for supervised visitation of my son. And so, on the one hand, that was one of the most heartbreaking, heart-wrenching pieces of information that you could possibly get. And I remember just feeling like my soul had been sucked out of my chest when I read it. And then it was either that day or a couple of days later, I got an email or I got a message on the terminal in the rec room saying that it was an apology, saying for some reason your paperwork got, again, magically placed in the wrong stack. She said you should have been out of here 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I've got you on a hot shot chain. You're going to be leaving the next available chain. You are going to Olympic Correctional Facility, on the Olympic Peninsula, the prison you chose. You have been accepted, and you will be getting on the next chain out of here. And so, as fate would hold it, on December 24th, Christmas Eve, my door popped open, and a letter came under my. A letter was put under my door, and it was my chain letter. And then a little bit later on, they popped the doors and they let me out of my cell, told me to roll up all my shit, and loaded me on to the prison transport bus, where I got a winter wonderland ride from Shelton, Washington, out to Forks, Washington, which, by the way, is not where the vampire story, I can't remember what it's called, is filmed, but it's where it's supposed to be filmed. I got to ride the chain bus out to Forks, Washington, to Olympic Correctional Facility to finally, after all of this misery, be in minimum security work camp and put all of this 23-hour-a-day lockdown behind me. So they put me on this bus and they chained me up to another guy. And I later found out his name was Danny. And so Danny and I were chained up on the bus next to each other. And we spent some of the time looking out the window. And I think both of us took a nap because it was like a 4-hour ride. I thought the bus was going to crash going through all those roads and all the snow and ice. And so That's how we spent half of our day on Christmas Eve traveling to Olympic Correctional Facility, where I would start my actual time in the prison system in Washington State. So that's where I will leave you today. When I come back, we will talk about what it was like actually finally arriving at my new prison and what the work camp and everything was like. And I will take you through the events that unfolded in that facility. So there you have it. I survived classifications in closed custody without getting my spokes broken. That's one of the prison terms for butt rape. Is they call it broken spokes. So I managed to make it through that experience and never caught a beat down. I never got shanked. I never had any violence occur. I had no broken spokes. And I got a Christmas Eve present and was transported to Olympic Correctional Facility, where we will pick up this story next time. So as always, thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one.